Hi guys, my name's Cade Parmenter, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about The Way of the Seal by Mark Divine. So, a little precursor to this, I have been sick for a little while now, and I sort of lost my voice, if you can tell. So, if you guys are struggling to hear me a little bit, just please try to bear with me on this. So, to start off, I'd like to talk about Mark a little bit. Fresh out of college, he started his career in accounting and consulting, where he worked for 4 years until he felt stuck in a rut and decided that that was not the career path that he wanted. Then he enlisted in the Navy and trained to become a Navy SEAL, which he did so successfully for 20 years, 13 of which he was a commander. After he was done in the Navy, he opened up multiple businesses. He opened a brewery, and he opened a academy where he helped people who wanted to go into the Navy. He helped train them and better prepare them for that challenge. He wrote this book, The Way of the Seal, in 2013, and this was his first of 2 New York Times bestsellers, the next of which he wrote only a year later. So first, I want to talk about how Mark organized his book. He started off with a note to the reader describing what was going to be in his book and how he was going to go about his business. Next, he had a brief introduction of himself in which he explained everything that I had just explained to you about him. He went over his military history as well as his education history and how he got to where he is in life. His book has 8 chapters, or principles as he calls them, and he finishes it with a small conclusion which states how you should always follow your heart and do what you think is best for you in the long run. So getting right into it, his first principle is all about set point establishment. And this is basically self-awareness and knowing your inner self. So Divine talks about knowing what drives you and what motivates you, but he also talks about knowing what triggers you and what upsets you or derails you from your path. And this is similar to knowing your strengths and weaknesses in the sense that you have that self-awareness of knowing who exactly you are. He also talks about knowing where you want to be and looking forward and setting that personal goal for yourself. The second point that Divine talks about is front sight focus, which is basically setting goals for yourself and for your company or business or whatever you may be doing. So he talks about 2 different types of goals, the first of which is long-term goals, which are the wanted end result. So you set a goal, and this is where you want to be by the end of your quest. But he also talks about setting short-term goals that you'll reach along the way. And these short-term goals help to keep you on your path and also to keep you motivated by giving you small incentives once you complete each one. He gives a few tips on how to see these goals, the first of which is visualizing the end goal. I think that's a concept that we're all very aware of, and I think it's something that people can do to keep this end goal in sight and stay on track. He also talks about understanding the mission, as he calls it. He refers to lots of things in military terms, so goal is synonymous with mission in this book. And understanding the mission is just having a solid knowledge of what you want to be doing and what your goal is. So Mark's third point that he makes in this book is making your mission bulletproof. And this all has to do with selecting the right goals for you. So he lists a few questions about that you should ask yourself before you set a goal. The first of which is, do I or my team have the right skills to complete this goal? So if you set a goal, but then you realize that your team won't be able to accomplish it, then that's probably not the right goal for you. Another question that you should ask yourself is, does this goal have a return, or is it worth it? Will there be something beneficial at the end once I complete this goal that will make all of this time and resources I've spent on it worth it? Is the goal achievable? Is it even possible in the first place? And the final question is the goal simple and easy to understand? Will it be clear to both the person setting the goal and the team members what the goal is and how to go about completing that goal? He also says that there are always multiple options. So the first goal that comes along, the first thing that you might want to accomplish might not always be the best. He says to take your time and pick out the right goal, the one that suits you best, in order to have the best success. Oh, and the last thing on there is to communicate the goal to your team. So make sure that everybody who's going to be a part of the process of achieving the goal knows the goal and knows the steps that need to be taken in order to complete the goal. Devine's fourth principle that he outlines is to do what others won't. And this is a very motivational step in the process. And he starts it off with work ethic, saying that if you can outwork someone, your chances of success will go up greatly compared to them. He also lists what he calls the 3 Ds, which are discipline, drive, and determination. I think those are very clear-cut and a very military-based thought, which would make sense with Mark. The fifth principle that Mark talks about is mental toughness. And he starts out this chapter by talking about how you respond to certain situations. If you have a situation presented in front of you, you have multiple ways to respond to it. But he says if you can control your response and keep whatever the task ahead of you is simple, then that allows you to complete that task and have a clearer head while you're doing so. The second thing that he says you can control to increase your mental toughness is your attention, and that could apply to multiple things. It could be the attention you give to others while they're speaking. It could be the attention you pay to small details, or it could be the attention you pay to your competition or your team members in their needs and their wants. And the final thing that Mark says you can do to increase your mental toughness is to control your emotions and not get too high when things are going well or get too low when things are going poorly. He says to try to stay at a steady rate the entire time, and that will help you to keep a level head and get through any problems that may arise. The sixth principle that Mark talks about in The Way of the SEAL is titled Break Things, and this section is all about failure. Now, Mark and the rest of the Navy SEALs don't look at failure in a negative light. Instead, they look at failure as a learning process. And he has here listed a list and a checklist of things to do when you fail. So the first step in failing something in order to learn from it is to try something. Give it a shot, and whatever happens, happens. Next, if you fail, then you need to assess the situation and understand why you failed. Figure out what was the thing that made you fail, and then correct that. Once you've made that correction, you need to make that change and try it again. And if you try it again and still fail, then you need to repeat it. And keep repeating this process until you finally achieve the outcome that you want. The seventh principle that Mark talks about in his book is building intuition. And this all starts with awareness. So having awareness of a situation, Devine defines it as having a sense of the full picture or the broad scale of things, while also paying attention to the small details as well. So if something is going on within your company or even your family, it's important to look at the situation as a whole, but also notice the little things, like who's being impacted here and how can I solve the problem at hand here. He also says that a very useful tool for this is to slow things down. Just take a deep breath, take a step back, and look at it from a different angle in order to get this full picture image in your head, and then you can work on solving it. And the eighth and final principle that Mark outlines in his book is to think offensively. Now, he says to always be aggressive, no matter what. You're not going to go anywhere, and you're not going to be successful in reaching your goals if you're passive. He says focus on offense at all times, and he also says that confidence is key. So confidence could come in a multitude of different ways. Of course, confidence could come when you're speaking to someone, but confidence is also trusting your decisions and knowing that what you did was your best option and just rolling with them. But confidence could also mean trusting your team members, having that trust in them and having that confidence that they're going to do what they think is best. Along with this, he also says to attack your goals with velocity and agility, which is another military term that he uses, which basically means to reach your goals quickly but efficiently. So have that urgency while you're doing so, but also keep efficiency in mind and try to do so in the best way possible. So to wrap things up, Mark stressed throughout his book that anybody can use these principles that he's outlined to become a better leader. They don't have to be an elite warrior or a businessman. It could be a single mother or an athlete. It doesn't matter the situation that you're in. You can take bits and pieces from this information and apply it to your life in order to become a better leader. And I think many people could benefit from reading this book and applying the leadership tactics that are written in it. Thank you guys for your time, and enjoy your night.